Hi, I'm Terry Reiber. Welcome to the Tea Party Show. The purpose of the show is to introduce the audience to the voices of the Tea Party. And my name is Terry Reiber, and I'll be the host of these episodes. And this is our very first episode, so I'm very excited to start this off. And today I have Christine Morabito, who is the president of the Greater Boston Tea Party with me. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I thought I'd start out by just asking a question about your background.
Sure. Well, I was born on Long Island, and my family moved to rural Missouri when I was 11. Okay. And being an animal lover, I was thrilled. We had a farm with lots of animals, which eventually led me to a 13-year career as a zookeeper, which was a great job. I got to travel all around the country and meet lots of great people. When I turned 40, I realized I needed to get a big girl job. I didn't have a 401k or any kind of savings or anything like that, and I realized I needed to get serious about my career, and I became a nurse. So I work in the psychiatric field at a private psychiatric hospital, and I work the overnight shift, so I do the tea party thing during the day and then work at night.
Wow, that's pretty steep. So how did you first find out about the Tea Party movement?
It was shortly after the 2008 election. I became very concerned with some of the things that I started hearing about that this administration was doing, and heard Rick Santelli's rant on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, I believe. And he was talking
Mercantile
Chicago,
yeah.
And he was encouraging people to start a tea party and tea parties around the country. And I attended my first Tea Party rally on the Boston Common, and I was hooked ever since. I had never before been around so many like-minded people who really believed strongly in limited government, free speech, free markets, individual liberty, and personal responsibility.
And how did the Greater Boston Tea Party first form? Were you part of the first forming of it, or did someone else form it?
I was involved fairly early on as a member of the steering committee.
Okay.
We have a 6-member steering committee that we discuss upcoming events, more of the direction that the Tea Party should be going in, policy type things that really helps us to sort of come up with a concrete message that we can share.
So initially, what was the mission or vision of the Greater Boston Tea Party when it was first formed?
Well, as I said, in our mission statement, the 5 things that we believe in are limited government, free speech, free markets, individual liberty, and personal responsibility. And those are pretty universal things, is what we've found. There are many Democrats and liberals that believe in some of those same things. We found in Massachusetts that it's not clear-cut whether it's a Democrat or Republican issue. We have many libertarians in our group. We have many independents. We have fiscally conservative Democrats that have come to some of our meetings and share a lot of our same views when it comes to fiscal issues. We do try to stick to the fiscal issues, because when you get into the more social issues, we can't even agree amongst the Tea Party members on social issues. They're very divisive, and we don't believe that those are the most important issues really that we're dealing with in our country. So, those are things that are pretty universal.
What about the concept of strict constitutionalists? Is that part of the Tea Party? You think people who are strict constitutionalists, or is that just people that have that sort of leaning are also a member of the Tea Party?
We do try to adhere to the Constitution. We do a lot of education on the Constitution. We have a woman named Catherine White, as you're aware of her. She has come to a lot of our meetings and taught us about the Constitution. A lot of us are learning about it, and I think that the Constitution is something that is not necessarily taught in schools as it used to be. And we feel that the more people know about the Constitution, the more they will realize when their rights and freedoms are being taken away. Because a lot of these things are happening and people don't even realize that they need to stand up up for some of these things that are being taken away.
Yeah, if you don't stand up for it, you're going to lose it,
Sure.
basically. How many members does the Greater Boston Tea Party have right now?
I believe we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 members. We have a lot of different groups. We have an email group. We're very active on Facebook and Twitter. We have a website as well, greaterbostonteaparty.com.
Mm-hmm.
We're active in all of those avenues. And there are older members that maybe have not embraced Facebook and the social media for whatever reason. Some of those people are just email members and not necessarily on Facebook. So it's difficult to come up with an exact number, but we have members from all over the country as well. And I think there's a fascination that there are so many conservatives in Massachusetts, which is typically a liberal state. People are amazed at how active we are here. Several of us Tea Party members went to Washington, D.C. and met with some of our lawmakers there, and they were very impressed with how active we are. And I think that we're very driven here because we have a bigger fight on our hands than maybe they do in other states, because there are so many of our freedoms and rights being taken away. We're taxed very highly in the state, so there are lots of things that we need to work on here in Massachusetts.
What sort of events do you run for your members?
We have 4 monthly meetings around the state. We have a Medford meeting, a Boston meeting, a Holbrook meeting, and a Mansfield meeting. So we try to do that monthly. At those meetings, we try to have some kind of educational, a speaker or a policy expert. We also invite candidates to come to those meetings so that folks can get to know who is running in their district, in their state, and figure out who would best represent them.
I believe also you've been going to some films lately?
Yes, there is a documentary out called 2016, Obama's America. Have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't.
No? I've seen it 4 times now, and mostly because I've been helping to host meetups, to get people out to go see it.
Right.
It's a fascinating documentary, and for me it was very meaningful because Dinesh D'Souza, which is one of the co-producers, he lays out a very compelling theory that sort of explains some of the things that President Obama has done that no other theory can explain. One of the things that has always sort of bugged me was when President Obama first got elected, he returned the bust of Winston Churchill back to Britain, which was given to us as a gift from Britain after 9/11. And that just struck me as so bizarre. And none of the other theories that people have come up with as to what President Obama's worldview might be, whether he's a socialist, all these labels that have been, attached to him don't really fit. And what Dinesh D'Souza talks about in the movie is his background. He through interviews and through family records, and he travels back to Kenya to meet some of Obama's family members there. He travels to Hawaii to meet some of the people that were very influential in Obama's life. And there's an element of anti-colonialism there. Both his father and his stepfather were from the Third World. His father was from Kenya and his stepfather was from Indonesia, which were places that were colonized. And so there was a feeling from a lot of his mentors and the people that were very influential in his life that was very anti-colonial. And when that was brought forward, it sort of, that might explain why Winston Churchill's bust was returned back to Britain, because Winston Churchill was a colonialist. And it's a fascinating theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but for me, it helped explain a lot of things that were not explainable before.
Yeah, I think when I was a teen, I had a bit of a distrust for large, governments and powers and what they were doing in foreign countries. So maybe he has that view towards what are we doing in these foreign countries? Are we
Sure.
are we trying to dominate the Middle East? Are we trying to get the oil out and sort of just stomping over the people there? He probably has those sort of concerns, and maybe he's also even concerned about the country itself. It's almost like he's a foreigner in his own country in terms of his own beliefs. But I wonder if that movie also was a response to the fact that people felt that Obama was not properly vetted. When he was first elected, he had this, this book out, Dreams of My Father, which nobody seemed to have read or really, parse out.
Sure.
Which I think that's what he's doing in the movies. He's parsing out that book and trying to flesh out more about it. And generally speaking, the liberal media sort of indicated that they gave him a bit of a pass on his way to the presidency. So it's almost like we're re-finding out who this person is after we hired him and he's been in the job for 4 years.
Sure. Definitely. And he talks about this in the documentary quite a bit, actually. And he feels like that people were so swept up in this, this idea of electing a black president, which, was a major accomplishment for this country, and, something that we should definitely be proud of.
I felt proud of that on the day.
I absolutely
regardless,
did.
I mean, I have to say I didn't vote for him, but the fact he was elected, I was pretty jazzed about it.
Sure.
I thought, wow, I mean, who would have thought that this soon we would see a black president versus even a female president. I thought we'd probably have a female president first, and to me that was just really set a marker out there.
It definitely did. Something our country definitely should be proud of. But I remember after the election, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh, and he had a caller into a station that said, finally, we can get past this race issue. We've elected a black president, we can get past it. And I remember Rush saying, no, I don't think so. He said that now you can't criticize the president who happens to be black without being called a racist. And that's pretty much what has happened. Definitely, it has been an issue with the Tea Party. A lot of our detractors, anything we say about the president, and we're against the policies that he is putting forth. The direction that he's sending this country into has nothing to do with race, but that seems to be a sort of a lazy way to attack.
Yeah, because it's really about ideas. I don't think, at least the people I talk to, don't even relate to that whatsoever.
No.
We just view if the person is up there and they're doing the right thing, we don't care. We just want a person that will do the right thing.
Sure.
So I think that's the major issue. But I wanted to swing now over to the local race. The big local race is obviously the Senate race between Warren and Scott Brown. Do you have any comments regarding that in terms of what sort of how the Tea Party views that race?
Sure. Well, first, let me say that the Greater Boston Tea Party does not endorse any candidates. Especially, right now we have primary coming up, so we wouldn't be able to do that anyway.
Right.
But we respect our members enough to know that they can get the information, which we help them provide. We're more of an educational outlet for them. I like to consider ourselves more of a candidate adoption service, if you will. We invite the candidates to come in and talk about their views and their issues. And we let our members decide who would best represent them and their families.
Right.
And that's something we feel very strongly about. And I think it helps our credibility that we're not going to endorse candidates. There's a chance we could endorse somebody who turns out to not be, what we had hoped, or,
right.
To have a checkered past or things like that. So, yeah, there's definitely advantages to not doing that. But that said, it would be very clear, obviously, we're not supporting Elizabeth Warren in this race. The Tea Party has had sort of a dysfunctional relationship with Scott Brown, if you will. There are some Tea Party members that feel very strongly that they, helped him get elected, and I would tend to agree with that. But some of the votes that he's taken have been pretty contentious, and some Tea Party members have serious, and myself included, have serious issues with some of the votes that he's taken.
But on the other hand, he probably needs to do that to survive an election like this. If he pulled hard to the right, he might not be able to pull those middle voters into his camp. So he's responding to the reality of the state that he's running in, I think, to some extent.
Well, you know, they say he votes with conservatives about 70% of the time.
Right.
Now, if you look at John Kerry, for instance, who votes with conservatives maybe 3% of the time, I have a hard time imagining a scenario where Elizabeth Warren would vote conservative even 1% of the time, which that would make her a 1%er then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, she strikes me as being obviously the part of the progressive left of the party.
She absolutely is. She was actually named number 5 of the U.S. progressives by a very progressive organization, and to me, the last thing Massachusetts needs is somebody who's made the who's who of the Socialist Party.
Right.
She has a very different worldview than the Tea Party. She seems to be of the opinion that what we earn belongs to the government, and that they're doing us a favor by letting us keep some of it.
Yeah, per permission is basically, we're permitted to keep something of what we earn, basically.
She says it's not class warfare, but it absolutely is. You know, this idea that the rich are not paying their share, that the rich got rich on the backs of other people. Now, in this country, we know that just because I get rich doesn't mean that you can't as well. This is a land of opportunity, which is very obvious by all the people flooding into this country. They know that this is a place where they can succeed.
Right.
And where the Tea Party disagrees with Elizabeth Warren is we want to encourage people at the bottom to want to better themselves. Mm-hmm. We don't want to make victims out of people. And that's what these progressives tend to do.
Well, they become a client, you know. If you can give a certain group of the public a benefit at the expense of other taxpayers reliably, then you would think they would reliably vote for the party that would tend to give them those benefits. I know that's kind of cynical because, you know, I think there are people who have legitimate needs, for sure.
Absolutely.
But it's a question of, you know, I think in the last 4 years, they said the number of people below the poverty line has increased. More people are on food stamps. I mean, to me, the purpose of I wouldn't say a purpose of the government, but a purpose of a good economy is to help people to harness their energies and become productive members of society.
Sure.
And when you see more people becoming unproductive, they're either, you know, on some sort of government benefit, or they're like 99 weeks of unemployment, or they're going on disability. I would say most of these people, given the chance, would rather be on the path of success than on the path of dependence.
Absolutely.
I think.
I think so too. I work in the psychiatric field. I see a lot of people that are on government assistance, and what I see them struggling with a lot of times, a lot of them have no structure in their lives. And I think what's missing is the message that there's inherent dignity in work.
Right.
I think that it helps people feel better about themselves if they're a contributing member of society. And when we don't expect anything from these people, I think we do them a great disservice. It's not compassionate to create dependency. And when done for political gain, it's downright cruel.
Mm. At the other end, though, you hear people obviously blaming, you say, the rich or large corporations. And I think to some extent there is some validity to that, because you have, you know, large corporations using their power, financial power, to persuade politicians to give them, you know, special consideration. Like if you're a large bank, you can't fail. If you're a large bank, every depositor is insured for $250,000. So the bank can make the most horrendous mistakes possible, and there's no way the government is going to take a large bank and and tens of millions of depositors and hand them all $250,000 or whatever the amount is that this bank could have lost. So now we're in this sort of grip between the taxpayer and the alligator being the bank, that they can't fail because A, we can't afford to give all these depositors money, and B, we can't afford a large bank to fail. But I think that to some extent there's sort of crony capitalism going on between these companies. So they know they can take risks, and they know the government's going to pick up the. In fact, they're I think more in charge of us than we are in charge of them at this point.
Very true.
I think people blame the rich, but I think they should be very careful. It's really, I think, the relationship between government and business, where crony capitalism is that's what, to me, the Occupy Wall Street people should be in front of the companies that are receiving special benefits like Fannie and Freddie or all these things that are going on. But instead, they're looking at, you know, some guy who maybe owns a company that makes cups and saying, well, you're a dirty, rotten rat because you make $3 million a year because you have this huge company that makes cups. Well, unless that guy is getting a special preference from the government, I'd say he did it himself. You know, I think the Republicans say we built it.
Sure.
But if you're a bank and you're getting, you know, all, you know, bailouts and special consideration, you probably can't say we built it. They helped us build it. You know, we gave them our $2 million a year in campaign contributions, and because of that, we got all these special things going on. I mean,
well, it comes down to the proper role of government, and the government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. Right. You know, which we've seen with Solyndra, for example. That was a failed company from the very beginning. The people that were advising the Obama administration about that company said it was a very risky investment. But instead, the administration took taxpayer dollars and invested it in Solyndra, and you know, the company failed. And I think that it's just not something that the government should get involved in. We should have listened to our founding fathers, who were brilliant. They knew that because of human nature, that politicians would get drunk with power. And you know, what we're seeing now is politicians who are no longer representing their constituents. They are sort of giving benefits to people who help them get elected, who will continue to help get them elected, and that's why we feel like we're losing our voice, we're losing our representation.
Yeah, we all lose. I think there's a book out, I can't remember what it's called, recently talking about clientism and basically saying, okay, we're going to give this group 99 weeks of unemployment. We're going to give this company a special tax break. We're going to give homeowners a write-off on their mortgage interest. And everybody's getting bought off, but every time there's rules and regulations, basically our liberty is decreasing. I mean, I've got this theory that the economy is going down because basically our liberty is being restricted. I mean, people have a natural will to go out and work and create things, and you know, I have a home garden, and unfortunately my garden this year wasn't as good as last year, but I'm hoping 10 years from now people will come over and go, wow, this guy can really garden, because every year I want to get better. And yet I think I'm seeing is the government's getting involved with crony capitalism and excessive regulation, and people are feeling handcuffed. And if they don't feel free to follow their urge to do better, if they feel the game's rigged or you know, they just feel that there's too many obstacles, then I think it's going to start going down. So I see the GDP of the country really as a reflection of the freedom of the country. But I'm speaking more as a libertarian than a Tea Party member, and I know there's a number of libertarians in the Tea Party movement.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap there too.
Yeah, by the way. Yeah. So I was going to go on to the national race, and obviously we had a GOP convention the other day, and there was a big brouhaha about the Ron Paul supporters not being able to go onto the floor and count their delegates. What is your thoughts around that?
Well, I'm not really an expert in that area, but it seems like they should have had the opportunity to at least express their concerns and get their voice out there. It seems to me. Yeah, other than that, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other.
Well, my other observation is, obviously the Tea Party has a pretty big effect on the Republican Party. I think there's, what, 80 elected representatives that are sort of identified as Tea Party these days, and yet when I see the whole thing going on the floor, I don't really get the sense that Romney's really embracing the Tea Party, that he sees the Tea Party as something over here that reluctantly, yeah, he needs those votes potentially, but I mean, what was your feel? Do you feel that he's really embracing the Tea Party, or is he kind of holding him a little bit arm's length, or what's your thought around that?
As a Massachusetts politician, I don't think it benefits them necessarily to align themselves with the Tea Party. I get that, but I think when you look at it, we share a lot of the same values. And when you hear him speak, he's speaking with the same voice as the Tea Party when it comes to lowering regulations, lowering taxes, getting the spending under control. Our lawmakers they're acting like teenagers with a checking account. And the citizens need to be the adults in the scenario, and finally, because of Romney and Ryan and their platform, the nation's talking about those things. And those things are not typically things that politicians like to talk about, because nobody wants to hear that their particular entitlement's going to get cut or their program's going to get cut. But we need to have this conversation in this country because, as you know, we're in serious financial trouble. And it has brought that conversation to the forefront. And I think we share a lot of those same views.
Yeah, I think it's leadership basically, because they're talking about issues that people wouldn't normally want to talk about, and they're willing to surface them, even if it makes them a little less popular. It's sort of like, taking the medication. You don't like the taste of it, but it's good for you, sort of thing. So what do you see as the future of the Greater Boston Tea Party over the next few years?
Well, I see us continuing to help educate people, to get people involved in the process. There's a lot of apathy in this country, and I think because of a lot of the things that you mentioned, the crony capitalism, the lack of representation of our elected officials, I think people feel like their vote doesn't really count anyway. So we want people to be empowered, to be able to have their voices heard, and we're a platform for that, and we hope to continue to do that and get people involved in the process.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Again, thanks to Christine Morabito, president of the Greater Boston Tea Party, and thanks for the audience. I hope you look forward to our next episode.